I inherited $10 million without knowing. Then I found a letter hidden in my dad's drawer. I was making coffee when the phone rang, the old landline in my apartment that hardly ever rang anymore. Only a few people had the number, and none of them ever called. I almost didn't answer. Something told me I should. "Hello? Is this Mr. Daniel Mercer?" the voice asked. It was calm, measured, like someone reading from a script. "Yeah. Who's this?" "This is Jonathan Reese, from the law firm of Carter and Blake. I'm calling regarding the estate of your late father, Richard Mercer." I froze. "There must be a mistake," I said. "My dad died almost 20 years ago." "Yes," the man said. "We're aware, but new developments have come to light. Are you able to come in for a meeting?" The law office was in a tall glass building in Midtown Manhattan, too fancy for anything that had to do with my dad. He'd been a mechanic, a good one, but he'd never had more than a few thousand in the bank, and he died when I was 15. Heart attack. Sudden, brutal. I remembered standing at his funeral not knowing how to cry. But there I was, 20 years later, being offered espresso in a leather chair across from a man in a $3,000 suit. "Mr. Mercer," Reese said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "This will explain everything." Inside were two things, a handwritten letter, and a bank statement. I looked at the number once, then again. Then I laughed out loud. $10,286,472.55. What the hell is this? Reese didn't smile. "It's yours. The money was placed in a trust by your father shortly before his death. He left specific instructions that it not be released until now." "But why now?" "That," he said, "is explained in the letter." Back in my apartment, I sat on the couch, letter in my hands, staring at my father's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in decades, strong, sharp, all caps. The envelope smelled like motor oil. I took a breath and opened it. "Danny, if you're reading this, then you're 35. I'm sorry I'm not there. There's so much I need to tell you about who I really was, about what I did, and what comes next. First, the money. It's real, and it's yours. But you didn't just inherit it, I stole it. And now, someone's going to come looking for it." Dad, I read it again. And then again. Someone was going to come looking for the money. I hadn't even touched it yet, and already, the nightmare had begun. I read the letter 5 times before I could even move. The words felt burned into my mind. I stole it. Someone's going to come looking for it. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to know. But part of me, the part that had learned to survive on cheap rent and expired groceries, kept whispering, $10 million. The letter wasn't long, but it had more weight than anything I'd ever held. There was a second page. It was folded tight, tucked behind the first like my dad wanted me to hesitate before reading it. "Danny, if you're smart, and I know you are, you'll do 2 things. 1, go to the garage in Queens, the one I used to take you to when you were a kid. Look under the floor behind the old Mustang. There's something I left for you there, something I couldn't put in this letter. 2, don't trust anyone who contacts you about the money, not even people who say they are trying to help, especially not them. If anyone knows you've received this letter, you're already in danger. Keep your head down. Be smart. And if you can, forgive me." Dad, I sat there for a long time, staring at the floor, trying to piece it all together. My dad, the man I thought I knew, the man who fixed engines and drank black coffee and never missed a Yankees game, was somehow sitting on millions of dollars, stolen millions. And he'd left them to me, wrapped in a warning. I should have burned the letter, or at least locked it away and ignored it. But of course, I didn't. Instead, I packed a bag, grabbed a flashlight, and called a cab to Queens. The garage was still there, run down. Half the letters on the sign missing. I hadn't been back since I was a kid. The smell hit me the second I stepped out of the car, grease, dust, old tires. No one was around. It was late. The street was quiet, too quiet. The side door was unlocked. That wasn't unusual, my dad never cared much for locks. I stepped inside, flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. Everything was exactly how I remembered it. The Mustang, a rusted-out '67, sat in the far corner like a ghost. I used to sit in the driver's seat and pretend I was racing through the desert. I walked over, crouched behind it, and started tapping the concrete floor with the flashlight. Hollow. One spot, just behind the rear tire, gave a different sound. I dropped to my knees and scraped at the grime. After a few minutes, my fingernails hit metal. A latch. I pulled. The trapdoor groaned open with a sound that made my skin crawl. Inside was a metal lockbox about the size of a briefcase, and taped to the top was a Polaroid photo. It was my dad, younger, thinner, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were shaking hands, smiling. but the man next to him had something in his eyes, cold, calculated, and written on the back of the photo, in my dad's handwriting, "If he finds you, run." The box was heavier than it looked. I didn't open it there. I don't know why, maybe instinct, maybe fear. Whatever my dad had left inside, it was meant for my eyes only. And something about the photo, that nameless man beside him, the warning, made my stomach turn. I wrapped the box in my hoodie, tucked it under my arm, and stepped back into the cool night. That's when I saw it. A car, black, parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. It hadn't been there when I arrived. I stood still for a moment, pretending to lock the garage door. The car didn't move. No door opened. No window rolled down. I turned and started walking, not toward the main road, but toward the back alley. I knew this neighborhood. I'd ridden my bike here 1,000 times as a kid. I took 3 turns without looking back. Then I ran. I didn't stop until I was on a different street, panting, heart trying to break through my ribs. I called a rideshare from a gas station and gave them a random address across town, just in case. I'd walk the rest of the way from there. Back at my apartment, I locked the door, pulled the shades, and set the box on the kitchen table. It had no lock, just an old latch that creaked when I lifted it. Inside were 3 things. The first was a stack of old passports, at least 7, all with different names, but all with my father's face. Younger, sometimes clean-shaven, sometimes with a beard. American, Canadian, British, even one Russian. The man in those photos wasn't a mechanic. He was something else. The second item was a ledger, handwritten, dense, filled with dates, numbers, and names. Names I didn't recognize. Some crossed out, some circled. On the last page, written in bold black ink, "The debt is paid, but they'll never forget." And finally, at the bottom of the box, was a USB drive, taped to an envelope. I opened the envelope first. It contained a single sheet of paper. If you're reading this, it means the money is officially yours, and the people I worked for will know it. The drive has everything. Documents, photos, audio, enough to destroy them if it comes to that. Use it as leverage, never as a weapon, and only if your life depends on it. If you do nothing, they might let you go, but if they reach out, do not, under any circumstances, meet them alone. Trust no one, not even the law. I stared at the drive in my hand, suddenly aware of how much weight something so small could carry, and then my phone buzzed. A text, from an unknown number. "Nice find, Daniel. Ready to talk?" My hands went cold. The text stared back at me like a loaded gun. "Nice find, Daniel. Ready to talk?" I didn't move for at least a full minute. My phone sat on the table, screen still lit, that message glowing like a trap. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I just turned the phone face down and stepped back like it might explode. How did they know? Had they followed me? Were they already watching the apartment? My instinct said to run, but where? Who do you run to when your dead father leaves you millions in stolen money and a hard drive full of secrets? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I loaded the USB drive into my laptop, offline, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, nothing connected. Just me and whatever was inside. There were folders, dozens, all labeled by date and country: Argentina, Syria, Kazakhstan, US, Op Echo, Luxembourg. Wolf. My dad had worked for someone, something, a black ops group, a rogue network, government, but off the books. Whatever it was, he wasn't just a cog in the machine, he was deep in it. The drive had photos of politicians, military personnel, corporate executives, names I recognized from the news. Some were still alive. Some had died mysteriously over the years. And then there were audio files, long, garbled conversations, code names, threats. One folder was labeled simply, "Debt." Inside, a recording dated 4 days before my dad died. "I've done everything you asked. I disappeared. I never touched the money. I stayed out of your way." Pause. "But you need to understand, if anything happens to my son, anything at all, this drive goes public. Every name, every file, every word." Another voice replied, colder, measured, "You think you're protecting him, but you just put a target on his back." I shut the laptop. I couldn't breathe. The money wasn't just stolen, it was bait. Insurance. My father's last desperate attempt to keep me safe. And I had just triggered the alarm. My phone buzzed again. Same number. "You're not safe there. If you want answers, come to the Manhattan Bridge. 1 a.m. alone." I checked the time. 12:14 a.m. My heart started racing. Every nerve in my body told me don't go. Don't walk into this. It's a setup, a test, a threat, but something deeper, curiosity, or maybe just anger, pushed back. I was tired of running, tired of being afraid of a man I hadn't even met. So I grabbed the drive, pocketed a switchblade I hadn't used since college, and walked out the door. The streets were quiet as I made my way downtown. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting a black van to pull up or a shadow to peel off the side of a building. But no one followed. No one stopped me. By 12:58, I was standing in the middle of the pedestrian walkway on the Manhattan Bridge, wind ripping off the East River, the city glowing in every direction. And that's when I saw him. A man in a black coat, standing at the edge of the bridge, waiting. I approached slowly, every muscle tense. "Daniel," he said, without turning around. His voice was calm, familiar, like the one from the recording. "You knew my father," I said. "I was your father's handler." He turned, and I froze, because I knew that face. Not from the files, not from the photos, from the Polaroid. It was him, the man my dad had warned me about, and he was smiling. He smiled like we were old friends meeting for coffee, like he hadn't just texted me from an untraceable number and lured me to a bridge in the middle of the night. "Relax, Daniel," he said. "If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be talking." He looked exactly like he did in the photo with my dad, just older, sharper somehow, not a wrinkle out of place, hair neatly slicked back, eyes like cold steel. The kind of man who'd kill you with a handshake and leave no trace. "I don't even know your name," I said. He nodded, almost like he appreciated the honesty. "You can call me Gray." "Of course. Not a real name, just a color." "You said you were my father's handler." "I was a lot of things to your father," Gray said. "Boss, partner, friend, enemy, depends on the year." "So you worked for the government?" He laughed, a dry, joyless sound. "We were adjacent to the government. Let's leave it at that." I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, held it up. "This is why I'm still alive, isn't it?" Gray's smile faded. "It's leverage, nothing more. Dangerous, yes, but also very valuable. Your father kept it as a last resort, a final card to play." I watched him carefully. "So why are we talking? You want me to hand it over?" Gray took a slow step toward me. "I want to offer you a deal." That word, deal, made my skin crawl. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Tucked inside was a single sheet of paper and a pen. "This is a contract," he said. "You sign it, you walk away clean. The money remains yours. No more texts, no more threats. We disappear from your life." "What's the catch?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "You give us the drive, and you agree never to speak of your father again. Ever." My grip on the drive tightened. "And if I don't sign, then we have a problem." The wind picked up, a siren screamed faintly somewhere in the distance. I glanced around, empty walkway, no witnesses. Of course, it was a perfect trap, but I wasn't my father. I wasn't going to fold. "What really happened to him?" I asked. "Don't give me the heart attack story. You were there, weren't you?" Gray didn't flinch. "He broke the rules. He got too close to something he wasn't supposed to see. He tried to protect you, but he made enemies, the kind that never forgive. And now I'm on their radar," I said. "Not yet," he replied. "But you're playing with fire, Daniel, and you're holding gasoline." I looked down at the contract. The paper was blank on the back, clean, crisp. My father had died for what was on this drive, for whatever secrets Gray and his people had tried to bury. I wasn't going to let that be for nothing. So I made a choice. I pocketed the drive, tore the contract in half, let the wind carry the pieces off the side of the bridge. Gray didn't blink. He just nodded slowly, like he'd expected it. "You're brave," he said. "Stupid, but brave." Then he turned and walked away, vanishing into the fog like a ghost. No threats, no violence, just a sense of finality, like the first move in a much longer game had been played, and I had no idea how much time I had left. The moment Gray disappeared into the mist, I knew something had shifted. This wasn't about inheritance anymore, or secrets, or even survival. I didn't move. Every instinct screamed trap, that this woman could be another Gray, or worse, someone who didn't care if I lived long enough to ask questions. But something about the way she said it, not urgent, not pleading, just inevitable, made me hesitate. I pressed my back to the wall and spoke through the door. "What's your name?" "Alex," she said. "Alex Vega. Your father called me the exit plan." That stopped me cold. The exit plan. My dad used to say that phrase when I was a kid, jokingly, when we'd sneak out of movies halfway through or when he didn't want to pay for parking. "Time for the exit plan, Danny." It was just a thing, a phrase, a memory. Also I thought. I unlocked the door but kept the chain on. "Prove it." Alex didn't flinch. She reached into her jacket slowly and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. I was with your father in Istanbul, Budapest, Bogota. He wrote everything down. Half of it is encoded. The other half, she flipped to a page and turned it toward the crack in the door, is about you. I looked. There was my name, written in my dad's handwriting, and under it, a phrase that hit me like a punch to the chest. If something happens to me, find Vega. Tell Danny to trust her, only her. I shut the door, unchained it, opened it fully. Alex stepped in, calm, scanning the room like she'd done it 100 times before. No small talk, no smile. She locked the door behind her and moved toward the laptop, glancing at the screen. You've already opened it, she said. Then we're out of time. Out of time for what? She looked at me. They are coming. Gray was just the opener. He doesn't get his hands dirty anymore. Who are they? I asked. CIA? Private contractors? Some rogue cabal? Everyone talks in riddles. Alex tilted her head. Because the truth is dangerous, even knowing it marks you. I think I've passed that point. She nodded. All right, she said. Then here it is. She opened her bag and pulled out a file. Not digital. Paper. Old school spy stuff. She dropped it on the table. Your father worked for an organization called Foresight. It started as a joint intelligence task force after the Cold War. US, UK, a few others, created to predict geopolitical threats before they happened. Like future warfare. Exactly. But Foresight didn't just predict events. They started influencing them. Elections, regime changes, market collapses, all under the banner of global balance. No oversight, no accountability. And my dad? He was one of their architects, one of the best, but something changed. He saw what they were planning. Project D19. I froze. That was on the drive. Alex nodded. D19 wasn't just a protocol. It was a purge, a plan to erase anyone who tried to leave Foresight or expose it. Your dad knew too much, so they marked him. He went underground, created the drive as insurance, and set up you as the contingency. Why me? Because no one would suspect you. You weren't trained. You weren't involved. You were his blind spot. But now I'm on their radar. You're more than that, she said. You're the only person alive with access to the full D19 archive. The only one who can bring them down. I laughed, short, bitter. That's not what I asked for. No one ever does. She pulled a phone from her coat, a satellite model, encrypted. She handed it to me. 2 options, she said. You leave with me right now, disappear, and we burn everything. Foresight survives. You live a quiet life, always looking over your shoulder. And the other? We go public, carefully, strategically. We leak just enough. Bring them into the light. But it's dangerous. People will die. Will I? Alex didn't blink. Probably. She stood up. You've got 2 minutes. Decide. I looked at the drive, at the laptop, at the life I used to have, now distant, meaningless. Then I looked at her, and said, let's burn them. This was war. I didn't go home. I took the subway to Brooklyn, got off at a random stop, and walked until I found a cheap motel with no cameras. Paid in cash. Used a fake name, just like my dad probably used to. Inside the room, I pulled the curtains shut, double-locked the door, and set the USB drive on the chipped wooden desk. I stared at it for a long time. That little piece of plastic, it held enough information to get me killed, or set me free. I didn't know which yet. I opened my laptop again, offline, encrypted, everything clean. I dug deeper into the folders. I wasn't just looking for dirt anymore. I was looking for answers. And that's when I found the real bombshell. A folder labeled D19 Protocol. Inside were surveillance photos. Dozens. But not of my father. Of me, going back years. Different cities. Different apartments. At my college graduation. Outside my first job. At my mother's funeral. In line at a coffee shop 2 months ago. They had been watching me my entire life. There were even emails, internal ones, between people I didn't know. Subject is unaware. No contact unless necessary. Father's failsafe active. ETA unknown. Should D19 surface, initiate phase 2. Then one message, timestamp 2 hours after I received the inheritance, D19 confirmed. Mercer asset active. Phase 2 initiated. My blood ran cold. I wasn't just a loose end. I was part of something. A contingency. A protocol. Something my dad had planned. But for what? The knock at the door was so soft I almost didn't hear it. 3 taps. Then silence. I froze. No one knew I was here. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't even used my real name. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. A woman, mid-30s, blonde, no makeup, calm eyes. She was holding a photograph. She slowly lifted it, pressed it against the door. It was a picture of me, taken tonight, on the bridge with Gray. I didn't open the door. "Who are you?" I asked, loud enough to be heard. She leaned in close to the door, and said softly, "I knew your father. He planned for this. If you want to live, you'll come with me, now." We left the motel that night with nothing but the drive, the notebook, and the burner phone Alex gave me. No luggage, no digital trail, no goodbye. By dawn, we were on a private bus heading north, somewhere deep into upstate New York. I didn't ask the destination. Alex didn't offer one. I think she was testing me, seeing how far I'd go without answers. We stopped at a gas station in a town so small it didn't even have a name on the sign. Alex led me behind an old mechanic's garage, through a rusted door, and down a staircase that looked like it hadn't been used in years. At the bottom, a cold, concrete bunker with 3 desks, 2 computers, a tangle of surveillance monitors, and a man with silver hair and tired eyes. "This is Mason," Alex said. "He used to be Forsyth." Mason gave me a long, unreadable look, then said, "Your father once saved my life in Berlin. Now I'm here to repay the debt." He didn't shake my hand, just gestured to the table. "What's on the drive?" I plugged it in. Mason and Alex worked fast, faster than I could follow. Files flying open, encryption layers folding apart like paper. Names scrolled by. Operations, black budgets, shell companies, locations. "Jesus," Mason muttered. "This is bigger than I thought." "Define bigger," I said. Mason looked at me, his face pale. "They are not just running ops, they are running countries. Foresight isn't a shadow organization, it's the organization. The wars, the market crashes, the coups, half of them were scripted decades in advance." "And D19? I asked. Alex answered. "It wasn't a purge protocol. It was a reset button. Anyone who went rogue, anyone who asked the wrong question, they were marked for deletion. Physically, legally, digitally. And my father? He refused to activate it. That's why they killed him." Mason turned to us. "We have to move. Fast. This data won't stay quiet for long. You brought fire into the open. Now they'll scorch the earth to bury it." We spent the next 48 hours building a plan. Extract the data and make multiple deadman switches, timed releases that would send the files to journalists, whistleblower networks, even the ICC, if anything happened to us. Leak just enough information to force Foresight into the light, a pressure release. The goal wasn't to destroy them all at once. It was to make them bleed, force mistakes, expose the leadership. That was what they called the leader of Foresight. No real name, no face, just a title. Every operation, every kill order, every cover-up passed through the chair's desk. Mason believed the chair was still active, still pulling strings. I asked him if he thought it was Gray. He shook his head. "Gray's a tactician, a monster, sure, but he's not a strategist. The chair is older, smarter, and paranoid. If we find him, we break the whole machine." That night, while Mason worked, Alex handed me something wrapped in cloth. "Your dad left this with me, said you'd need it." I unwrapped it. A 9mm Beretta, clean, unregistered, lightly oiled. "I don't know how to use this," I said. "You will," she replied. She stood in the doorway, watching me. "You still want out," she said, not as a question. I looked down at the gun, then at the drive. "No," I said quietly, "not anymore." By morning, Mason had cracked a secondary file hidden inside the D19 folder, a hidden protocol tied to an offshore account. Inside, payments, millions, all routed through a single clearinghouse in Switzerland, and every single transaction was signed with the same digital fingerprint, one that matched a name buried in the personnel files of Foresight, a name I recognized instantly, Jonathan Rees, the same lawyer who handed me the inheritance, the man who started this entire thing, and below his name, a single calendar entry, dated 3 days from now, Zurich's Chair Summit. Alex looked at me. "We just found the hornet's nest. 3 days. That was all the time we had before the summit, the meeting where, if Mason was right, the chair himself would be present. Foresight didn't hold many of these, maybe once a decade, maybe less, but when they did, it was never for small talk. Zurich, neutral ground, old money, safe havens. If they were meeting there, it wasn't for strategy, it was to put out a fire, and I was the fire. We flew under false names. Mason had connections, old favors owed. Alex carried herself like she'd done this 100 times. I just tried to keep my hands from shaking. The Beretta was taped inside a suitcase liner. The drive was split across 3 micro SD cards, stored separately, one in my sock, one sewn into Mason's jacket, and one inside a fake blister pack of aspirin in Alex's bag. When we landed, Zurich felt too quiet, too clean, like a painting that didn't belong to the real world. The kind of place where people wore watches worth more than cars, and secrets could walk around in broad daylight, perfectly dressed. Mason set up shop in a safe house above a bookstore. From there, we tracked Reese's known contacts, following credit card footprints, burner phone logs, facial rec. He was here, no doubt, and he wasn't alone. The summit was happening in a private conference center beneath the National Bank, a place the public never saw, built like a fortress. No access without biometric clearance. No cameras, no windows. Foresight didn't just rent it, they helped build it. We had one shot to get in. Alex posed as a translator. She had forged credentials and an earpiece that fed her real-time language prompts from Mason. The idea was to piggyback on an arriving South African diplomat who didn't speak fluent English. Foresight's security was good, but they weren't expecting infiltration from inside the diplomatic bubble. That was our crack in the armor. I went in as support staff, dressed like the AV team, carrying a rigged hard drive disguised as presentation materials. My job was simple: get into the back hallway, find the server access room, and plug in the transmitter. Once it was live, Mason could remotely access the summit's internal communications, video, audio, everything. But it only worked if I wasn't caught. If I was, I'd be disavowed. Worse, I'd just disappear, like all the others. The building was ice cold inside. Clean metal walls, soft lighting, no sound except for the occasional echo of shoes on tile. I followed a team of real tech staff through a security checkpoint, pretending I knew exactly where I was going. My badge was fake, but it scanned green. Mason had done his job. 10 minutes in, I found the server room. I waited until the hallway was clear, ducked inside, and locked the door behind me. The machine hummed like it was alive, a wall of blinking lights. I crossed the room to the central node and inserted the transmitter. One light blinked red, then green. Then the door slammed open. Gray, standing there like he'd always been. No guards, no gun, just him. "You don't listen very well," he said calmly. I stepped back, hand drifting toward my waistband. "You think this ends with an upload?" he said. "You think the world will care? That they'll believe you? That they'll stop it?" "I think they'll see it," I replied. He tilted his head. "And what happens after that? They'll call it conspiracy, buried stories, discredited sources. You'll be another name on a list no one reads." I kept my eyes on him. Maybe, or maybe they finally pay attention. Gray stepped forward. "I offered you an out. I gave you peace. You could have lived a quiet, invisible life. But now, you're a liability." I pulled the Beretta from under my jacket and leveled it at his chest. He stopped. I didn't speak. "You won't do it," he said. "Your father couldn't either." "Yeah," I said. "And it got him killed." I pulled the trigger. One shot. Gray dropped without a word. I stood there, breathing hard, the gun still shaking in my hands. My ears rang from the shot, but the transmitter light was still green. The data was moving. I wiped the prints off the gun, left it on the floor beside him, and walked back into the corridor. 15 minutes later, the summit erupted in chaos. Fire alarms, power failure, scrambled communications. By the time they figured out what had happened, Mason had already uploaded the drive to 5 international networks, including one that broadcast in real time. Names, photos, financials, the whole black spine of Foresight exposed to the world. But the chair never showed. He was never there. And as we slipped out of Zurich, vanishing into crowds and terminals and back doors, Alex leaned in and whispered, "This isn't over. We cracked their shell, but we haven't touched the core." I looked at her, heart still racing, adrenaline still hot. "So what now?" She gave a small smile. "Now we find the chair, and we finish what your father started." Fallout from the Zurich leak was immediate and brutal. News networks exploded with stories about Foresight's global manipulations. Governments denied involvement, diplomats deflected questions, and stock markets wobbled. But beneath the surface, something darker stirred. They were hunting us. Alex, Mason, and I moved constantly. Safe houses, anonymous cars, untraceable phones. The world had shifted overnight, but we were still ghosts in a storm no one saw coming. We had the data out, but without the chair, the heart of the operation remained intact. And the chair was more dangerous than anything I'd faced. Days later, a cryptic message arrived on the burner phone. No sender, just coordinates and a time. Alex frowned. "It's bait, but the only bait we've got." I nodded, gripping the phone tight. When we arrived, it was an abandoned estate on the outskirts of Prague, surrounded by dense woods and shadowed by an overcast sky. Mason checked the surroundings with a steady calm I envied. Traps, cameras, we're not alone. Inside the mansion, every creak echoed like a threat. We followed the coordinates to a hidden basement door. As it creaked open, a cold draft swept past us, and then, light. There, sitting behind a polished mahogany desk, was a man in his 60s. Silver hair, piercing blue eyes, calm and composed. The chair, Jonathan Rees. He smiled thinly. You've caused quite a stir. I stepped forward, anger rising. It's over. Your empire is exposed. He chuckled. Exposed? Perhaps. But empires don't fall because the people see the cracks. They fall because the foundations crumble, and I control those foundations. Alex tightened her grip on her sidearm. Why did you kill my father? His smile faded. He was a liability, but more than that, he was a man who believed he could change the game. I respected him once. But respect doesn't save you from power. I felt the weight of every loss, every moment I'd lived in fear. Your power ends today. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. You underestimate me, but I admire your courage. I'll offer you a choice. Join me, and together we reshape the future. Or resist, and be erased. I glanced at Alex and Mason, no hesitation. Neither, I said. Suddenly, lights flickered, and a dozen armed operatives poured in, surrounding us. Sure, here's the same text in English. The air in the room was thick, almost suffocating. The sound of the agent's footsteps echoed like a sentence being passed down. Jonathan Rees, the chair, maintained his cold, calculated posture, watching our every move as if he were observing a chess game, one where he already had several moves planned ahead. I could feel my heart racing, adrenaline taking over, while Alex, Mason, and I exchanged quick glances, searching for a sign, a strategy that could get us out of this dead end. Without warning, the lights flickered and a piercing siren began to blare, a distraction, the setup for the chaos about to erupt. Alex was the first to move. In an instant, she drew her gun and fired at the wall beside us, creating a cloud of smoke and confusion. Mason quickly pulled out a device that unleashed an electromagnetic pulse, temporarily shutting down the room's technology and blinding the agent's electronic eyes. Tension exploded into a chaotic confrontation. I pulled out the Beretta I carried, focused, every shot a step in the deadly dance we were trapped in. The confined space amplified the sounds, gunfire, shouted commands, hurried footsteps, all mixed with the acrid smell of smoke and adrenaline. Jonathan stood firm in the center of the storm, his gaze fixed on me as if he knew we were the last obstacles between him and his absolute reign. He didn't dodge, he almost seemed immune to danger, a leader used to manipulating the pieces while others fought for him. During the chaos, I realized his strength wasn't just in military power or cutting-edge AI. It was his coldness, total control over the game, the ability to predict our moves and lay traps before we even saw them. But I also saw that, despite all his arrogance, he didn't expect our courage or our determination to end this no matter the cost. Amid shots and dodges, I reached his desk. With a quick move, I threw my father's notebook onto the polished surface, opening it to a page marked with coordinates. This ends here, I said. Jonathan gave an ironic smile, as if the challenge were a gift. Then come, he replied. If you want to erase my shadow, you'll have to get through the labyrinth I built. Before I could react, he pressed a hidden button. The walls began to move slowly, transforming the room into a moving prison. This was the heart of the chair's fortress, a place where he controlled everything. The game had changed to a different level. Now survival depended on intelligence, speed, and sheer will. We knew the real battle was just beginning.